Look closely at modern cultural and intellectual movements, and you will notice a recurring pattern. Highly intelligent, highly educated individuals frequently construct comprehensive worldviews that deny observable, objective reality. Common attempts to explain this behavior usually suggest a lack of education, exposure to poor evidence, or a simple deficit of accurate information. The theological framework laid out in Romans chapter 1 requires us to reject that premise. Human unbelief exists despite an abundance of objective data. Unbelief is a deliberate, systemic moral mutiny against a known reality. The cognitive engine driving this rebellion is a mechanism known as the Axiom Swap, a deliberate substitution of the mind's starting principles. The unregenerate mind continues to utilize reason, applying logical processing to corrupted starting data. To understand how this works, we will reverse engineer this architecture of suppression. We will start at the absolute baseline of human ontology, what we are as creatures, and trace the precise cognitive mechanics of rebellion. Analyzing modern cultural insanity requires looking past intellectual arguments to examine the moral foundation of the human mind itself. We begin with the foundational boundary of human ontology, the creator-creature distinction. Human nature is defined by creatureliness, the reality of being derived, finite, and inherently mutable. Look at this diagram outlining the relationship between human volition and God's sovereignty. The human will, represented by W, operates entirely inside the perimeter of the divine decree, represented by D. A creature can never step outside this boundary. Inside that boundary, God executes general revelation. He uses the sheer scale, precision, and physical architecture of the universe to communicate his invisible attributes, specifically his eternal power and divine nature. We do not observe this universe as blank slates, hoping to logically deduce that a creator might exist. This model illustrates how we process reality. We observe the universe through a hardwired epistemological receptor. In the original Greek of Romans 1, this is called an autois, a knowledge placed in them. Environmental data streams hit an innate cognitive node. That internal hardwiring translates raw external data into an inescapable conclusion. The mind immediately recognizes a righteous lawgiver. Because this input mechanism operates flawlessly in every human being, the Apostle Paul declares that all humanity is left legally without excuse. The input is perfect. The internal receptor functions exactly as designed. Therefore, the rejection of God is always a failure of the will. If the internal and external evidence is undeniable, why is widespread denial and idolatry the default human condition? The answer lies in the Greek term katechontōn. It means to hold back, to restrain, or to intentionally pin something down. Maintaining unbelief requires a violent kinetic expenditure of energy. It functions exactly like this: a highly buoyant object forcefully held underwater. The reality of God's existence and authority acts like that buoyancy. It exerts continuous, inescapable upward pressure on human consciousness. To keep that truth submerged, the unregenerate mind must exert exhausting, continuous moral counterpressure. This active effort is driven by the creature's deep-seated hatred of the lawgiver's moral authority. The creature desires total independence, and that internal desire fuels the suppression. Modern atheism and secularism represent exhausting, active rebellions against the mind's own hardwired design. Every rational mind must reason deductively from a primary starting premise, an axiom that anchors its entire worldview. The original sin in the garden was a moment where a mutable creature, left to his own finite resources, evaluated two competing premises and made a choice based on internal desires. This is the Axiom Swap. Watch this architectural model. The mind deletes the foundational block of God's lordship and inserts a counterfeit premise: radical creaturely autonomy. This swap occurs because the rebel prioritizes the desire for ultimate independence over objective truth. And from that point on, the cognitive construction accelerates. Even in rebellion, the mind continues to use logic. As you can see, the tower grows with mathematical precision. These constructed worldviews maintain rigid internal consistency. They are perfectly logical and highly sophisticated, but they harbor a fatal flaw. Because the starting data is a lie, the entire intellectual structure is completely untethered from reality. Highly rational people believe insane things because flawless logic applied to a false axiom guarantees a perfectly engineered delusion. Look at what happens to a worldview built on the false axiom of radical autonomy. It is mathematically destined to fail. The fractures in the foundation shatter the entire matrix. Romans 1 refers to this as becoming futile in their thinking. It is the philosophical inevitability of building a logical system on a broken premise. The deconstruction is systematic. A pristine but mutable creature receives flawless revelation, responds with active suppression, executes the axiom swap, and achieves ultimate cognitive futility. We must discard the philosophical illusion of an autonomous, libertarian free will. A choice independent of the mind's governance is a rational mindlessness. The mind always guides the choice based on its strongest internal desires. The suppression of truth is a conscious, highly rationalized choice made by a mutable free agent. The rebel knows exactly what they are doing, and they know the consequences. Now, scale this up. What happens when this internal decay moves from the individual to the macro level of society? You get a corporate mutiny. Entire cultures construct massive institutional frameworks, demanding that objective reality bow to the subjective self, or to the absolute power of the state. These movements are screaming at the lawgiver, using his own loaned air. Until we recognize that, we will never effectively dismantle their flawless lies.